This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Doug Fleener for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing this morning?
Great, Phantom. Thanks for having me.
Well, we love to talk to people from around the world. We're going to talk to you. You're an author. You got a book coming out next year, which is coming up pretty quick, 1/6/26. So start with what if weekly questions to spark change and growth, and that's your release date again, 1/6/26. And we've got your website below, but right now we're linked to the QR code there is for those of you who are podcasters or podcast guests. If you want to know how to get on a podcast, go scan that QR code and you can get introduced to Podmatch, and that's how you link up guests with hosts. So we're part of that network, and that's how we're here today. And we're going to talk more about what you're doing with your book, but your whole history. So I'm going to start with a couple questions, like what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think for me, it's that my goal every day is to help people change and grow, but to know that it's actually can be simpler and faster than what they think. I think we overcomplicate change and growth. I think we think to have a great big plan. So my goal, whether it's something in your profession, whether it's something personal, that I try to help give people the simple tools and ways to immediately change and grow. And that's my calling, if you will.
I think it's cool to pay it forward with what, the reason we have people come on the show is like to have their vision kind of discussed in a longer form than what people are used to, because people see so many things today, like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, these quick hits. And we try to give people at least like an hour of like an in-depth, like what is our guest talking about? What is their vision? What are they trying to bring to the world? And I think it's like you have to talk for longer than like five seconds or 15 seconds to be able to get that across.
Yeah, we're definitely a society of quick hits.
So
quick swipes.
Yeah, I'm a child of the 70s. I'm a kid. I used to listen to vinyl, listen to the whole album all the way through,
Right.
watch a movie without being distracted by my phone. Right.
So, and not only that, not only did you listen to the music, you had to be reading the cover, right? I mean, that was.
Yeah, you're reading the lyrics, you're looking at the cover, you're paying attention to just Led Zeppelin. Right. Yep. But if today, like you get a kid and they're on a video game, they're on their PS5, they're on TikTok, they're watching a TV, they're on their iPad, and it's like, and then they keep on rewinding the movie because they're not paying attention. It's like, it's like there's no focus. And so I think it's really important to try to get people like what is it that you want to do today? You're trying to do everything, or you're trying to focus on winning certain, trying to get through the day, and like what is your expectation of what you want to
do? That's a big big thing.
So you talking about like the what if rule, and so that kind of like I know you're just kind of blue sky and things, or trying to figure out what could you do, what's the possibility here? Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, so I think the key to creating any kind of change and growth, and we can get into it a little bit, but my story is one of where I bankrupted a family business because of drugs and had my world just fall apart that I created in my late 20s. But one of the things I've learned is, again, whether it's big or small, is what we have to do is we have to interrupt our current thinking. We have to interrupt our routine. Right? We have to interrupt the old stories that we're telling ourselves or others are telling us over and over. And so the what if rule is really, it's about using interruption as a key point of change and growth. And so the what if rule is just a real simple thing that at any time, anything going on in your life, you got an annoying coworker, you got a major decision to make, is to pause. Just pause and stop for a moment so that you're not on autopilot, or pause that there's other opportunities, there's other options. And then so it's a simple little 3-step called pause, question, go. Because I believe that these interrupters are just so important.
Well, I think it's really important because today we kind of live in a world where you have like the disruptors, right? So disruption is different than interruption. You got
Hmm.
people that's like, well, this looks like tear the whole thing apart, right? And it's a kind of an IT thing. I'm in the IT world, but these people come in and it's like, well, that's 19th century. We don't need that. I was like, really? Okay, there's certain things within that 19th century framework maybe we do need,
Yeah,
and you guys are
absolutely.
jumping ahead. It's like, because like rule of law, it's like
Yeah, right.
people's privacy laws, copyright laws. There's certain things that we do need. Now I understand your tech is so advanced that it's in your way, right? That though that's an inconvenience. But like Oppenheimer saw things as like he got so caught up in what he was doing. And then when he actually saw what it did, he's like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have
Yeah.
done that. Just because I could do it, maybe I shouldn't have done that."
Yeah, good point.
So sometimes the tech we get ahead of ourselves, and a lot of times we get ahead of ourselves because like you said, you're in that loop. You're phoning it in. You're just on a replay. You're just like, and you're not really thinking about like like why am I in this situation? To have I taken like the Victorian point of view of the looking glass self, right? You stop, you look, you ask, like, why am I not happy? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why, like, what's my modus operandi? Why am I here? Should I be somewhere else?
Yeah, look, and right. And so sometimes what you just have to do is, again, and this is what the book tries to do is give you these prompts that really just interrupts what's happening. And and the one I go to a lot is I was working with a client once who, you know, her whole identity is she was a procrastinator. Right? So she would say she's a procrastinator, she would procrastinate, and right, she created eventually that identity. Somewhere along the line, she just decided she didn't do things,
Hmm.
right? And so yeah, she says, "Well, I can never change." And I don't
Yeah,
believe that's the case. I believe you can always change and grow on a daily basis. And so we had to kind of break through with her on why she's kind of saying that. But the first thing is just to stop.
yeah. You really have to reprogram. I mean, if you think about it, I'm a coder. I'm a you know guy who deals with structures, and we have things called structural change and non-structural change in IT, right? So, like, if we
Uh-huh.
have a structural change, totally new infrastructure, totally new tables. If we have non-structural, it's like, hey, I'm taking a column in a table, I'm changing the value of a field in the table. But if it's a structural change, it's a totally different table, or it's not even a table. It's something
Right.
else. So a lot of times, like in computers, like I can wipe the memory, I could start all over. I could actually reset the whole thing, and the brain can do the same thing. And we get caught up and say, we are what we say we are.
Mm,
So if I say I'm a bad cook, then you're always going to be a bad cook.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, right. And so it's what you say you are, but ultimately really you are what you do.
hmm
And right. And so, sometimes those things of what we do, I mean, I know people who will say they're one way, but if you followed and walked around, watched them, they're
or what they
completely
actually do.
opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. You
exactly.
have that.
But we
You have
really
that
are who
mask
we what
on.
we do.
Yeah, what's that mask on? Because like what you sometimes you're putting up a front. And so you're saying you're one thing, but you're actually doing the other because you just want their appearances, it's kind of shallow. He's like, if I can push off this image, but really what I do is this, but I don't want anybody really knowing what I do. And even like you might not even want to deal with it internally. Right. You might be doing something, you're on autopilot, you're always doing these things, but you say, well, that's not really me. But that's what you do. And people, like you
Yeah.
say, measure you based on what you do.
Yeah, and it's that perception. I used to do a lot of retail consulting. I was at a store once, and the owner said, she told me, she goes, we're phenomenal at greeting people. I was like, oh, cool. I can't wait to see. And a customer would walk in and nobody say a word. Another customer would walk in and nobody said a word. So, I said to her, I don't know about you, but greeting in my world usually means opening your mouth and saying something. And she
Mhm.
didn't even see that her employees didn't greet a customer, something as simple, but because she had already decided they were good at it, she just didn't even see what the reality was.
Yeah, our brain, we create these filters, and you filter to what you want. So even if you're in a conversation and you're in a conversation with somebody, somebody says something and your brain says, well, that's what that means. And you turn off and you don't even hear what they're actually saying because you've already filtered it to like, this is what it
Mm,
is. And so a lot of times, it's good to go ask people when you're having conversations, what did you actually mean by that?
mm.
Because a lot of times your filter will just totally get it wrong. Yeah, and then you're not actually understanding or even having a true conversation. It's just so filtered and so directed to what you expect it to be rather than what it actually is.
Yeah, I had a coach once who told me that one of the best things I could say to somebody is tell me more.
Hmm.
Because that first time was what my interpretation was, regardless of almost what they said. But the second
Yeah.
one is I would be clued in and listening more.
Yeah, it's super important because a lot of times I think everybody's like passing each other today. People are so, and the thing is, like, the technology doesn't help because technology, the algorithms, you turn on your computer and it just reinforces what you like. So if you just stay in a narrow lane, all you're going to see is that stuff in your lane. If you want to
Absolutely.
get outside the lane, you've got to go outside the ether. You've got to actually go talk to somebody, go read
Mm,
a book, actually go and do it and find out for yourself rather than getting somebody's third hand opinion on what that is. So I think if we've got some really, really awesome tools because we're here talking because of this type of tech. But we also have got to remember, like, the human experience is still super important.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things you reminded me is, when you were like read someone's text, if you have someone come, can you believe this text? And they start reading the text, and the way that they read it, right, is the way that they interpret it. And I love to sometimes just take the phone and read it back to them in a completely different mode.
Yeah.
So they see it as an angry text and read it back as a nice text. It's actually pretty interesting how that whole mode that you put around it, so much affects how you interpret what they wrote. And that's one of the problems I think with text and email, what have you, is you're the one who actually most of the time puts kind of the feelings behind it because they're just sharing the words.
Yeah, that's super important because a lot of times they like in the industry I'm in, people send these texts or on Teams that throw these chats, right? And then suddenly your boss like totally misinterprets what you wrote. And then you
Yeah.
got to jump on a call because you've got to like explain, it's like, no, 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 this is not a fire. We haven't gotten into a total emergency breakdown. Because a lot of times the boss will see something, it's like, oh, that's like, that's that. Oh, we got to jump on this. And it's like they just immediately went to the worst case scenario. And you've got to like, no, 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 no. You got to back it off and actually have a conversation. And it's like that the mis interpretations are just all over the place.
Yeah.
It's super important to not let it cascade or like hide from it. Like the worst thing you can do is like not want to clarify it.
Yeah. And that's why I think, when you get one of those emails or those texts or what have you, that minute of pause, right? That interruption, right? Because you see it, someone gets an email, well, I'll show them or I'll tell them, right? And just
Yeah,
stop. The old line, restraint of tongue and pen. Well, I guess now it's tongue and pen and keyboard, right? But just
yeah,
taking that moment to just say, and
yeah. Don't
what's really
escalate.
going on here.
Yeah, because you get in an escalation path and then it just goes critical, and then you're like totally causing something that's like it didn't need to happen. And a lot of times it's taking a break. Yeah, get diminishing returns. Like if you're an artist, like and even an athlete, like you can over practice, you can over
Mm,
rehearse, and like there's a point where like you did the song for like 5 hours because you got a show. You keep on practice, practice, practice. You practice so much that you actually hurt your hands.
yeah.
And now when you go to do the show, your practice was supposed to make you better, but now you screwed it up because now you can't hit the notes right because you overworked yourself. And that sometimes you need to have some grace and kind of stop and say, I got this. I've been playing for 10 years. I got over 20,000 hours.
Right.
Why are you so anxious about something you actually know?
Yeah. And the fact is, even if there's a small mistake or something in there, your listener, they don't
They
hear that.
won't know.
They
They
don't
don't
know
know.
what's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Same thing with thing with me. I mean, I do a lot of speeches, and there's been times where I start off, and then somehow I just zone out, and I start doing the middle of the speech, even though I'm only 5 minutes in. Well, they don't know any different, right?
Yeah.
So I
That's
just
that's a
circle
that's a
back.
super critical thing because a lot of times, like, well, like if you're a jazz musician, you're more into that. You're a fusion jazz musician is willing to like, oh, I hit the note that wasn't composed, but that's an opportunity. That's not the end of the world. Herbie
Right.
Hancock talked about that with Miles Davis. He had a chord one time that wasn't the chord for the song, and Miles actually adapted his part to match his chord.
That's
And
awesome.
then later they had a discussion, and Herbie said, "Well, am I going to get kicked out the band, or am I just the end?" Like, no, this is the point of this type of music is like to explore and to expand and to evolve. And you actually made me think about something new, and making changes. We evolved the song. Unlike classical, is like you have different like a classical, like your conductor can kind of change how you do it, but not the notes. They're not changing the
Right.
notes; they're changing your expression of the notes, but you're kind of locked into the note. In the fusion, like you're not locked into the note. You could actually change it. You could go to a different key, you can go to a different rhythm. You could change it. You don't have to tie to the original piece of music, and that just gives you like, oh, I can live in the present.
Right.
I don't have to be locked into this thing. I can actually go and actually go toward the future because I don't I don't have to be so wedded to something and say, oh, I'll make it. I have to be perfect, and being perfect is not part of art. A lot of things it's the happy accident, the imperfections that what makes art is
Right.
that. You have the mastery, but you have those things that kind of, oh, this kind of, oh, it's out of the wind. It came out of the muse gave it to me. I got to download. Like, oh, listen to it.
Yeah. And I love that, locking into the present, right? Because so much I like to say, it's my actions usually aren't an issue. It's my reactions that usually are the problem, right? And so
Yeah,
reactions, right, is taking information of the past and bringing it to the current. And one of the things is when I coach people, one of the things I see is that they have a tendency to think that any feedback, any information from their boss or what have you, is about them. Yeah,
hmm
98% of the time, it's about the situation, but
yeah, it's not
because
personal.
of right, and what they're bringing to it, and when you coach people, or when you try to help your children, I mean, that's kind of one of the big things is kind of this locking in on the present and putting, I think most people think of, right, when they get feedback, they think of criticism, and again, it's
Yeah,
because
take it
they're bringing in
personal.
the past, versus I like to focus on, hey, here's what's happened, but what are we going to do about it? Because whatever's happened has happened. That
Yeah,
horse or
it's true.
cow or whichever it is that's already left the barn.
Well, a lot of times, like you think about grammar, you think about your English teacher in high school, and I had a really great English teacher who was very creative. And her approach was, and unlike a person who's really, really into the logic of the grammar, if they saw mistakes, they would point out the really good things about your piece of work, and then gradually tell you, "Oh, you need to clean this up." Versus this other type of teacher who would just focus totally on the grammar, like that's the end of the world. There's no good content here at
Right.
all. So it's like how you approach feedback can help get people to understand it's not personal, right? If you actually showing us like, hey, there's some good stuff here, but we need to work on this, right? That not that you have to always do that, but sometimes people will just take things personal. So as a human being, if you hit them with like this is terrible, well, they're gonna take it personal.
Yeah. Uh when I was kind of a young manager, and I realized that when I was trying to help people be better, and this was back, I remember the old Sharper Image stores, and I was a Sharper Image manager, and I was trying to help my salespeople sell more product, and they were on commission, so it was a good thing. But what I realized is when I try to give them this feedback, they'd get really resistant. And so what I
Mhm.
came to see is I'm talking about here's how to be better. And what they heard was criticism.
Mhm.
And so I made this little tweak a long time ago that I talk about how to help you be even better.
Yeah.
And just that little positioning makes people, right, be able to listen without resistance, without hearing criticism. Because I'm not going to criticize, because again, I'm just going to use whatever happens as a basis to make what should and what can happen.
Yeah, because I mean, that's like if you're dealing with people, like if you're whiteboarding something, and every time somebody comes up with an idea, you're so locked into what you're it's like kind of top down. Like if you're in a situation where the CTO comes in, it's all top down. Like he's got all these engineers, but his idea is the idea. He
Mm,
doesn't listen to anybody else. So eventually, nobody ever brings anything up because he's always top down in it. And then he wonders, why, how come no one ever brings us anything? Because you always
yep.
come in with the idea from the start. Like, why don't you listen to your engineers and then work out a situation? Like, okay, maybe we could take this and we could take that. But if you top down it, like this is the only thing you already know what it's going to be, then why are we having a meeting?
Yeah, I funny story. I was director of retail at Bose, and we would do these 360 evaluations, right? So your boss would evaluate you, your colleagues would evaluate, uh, and your employees would evaluate you. And I remember getting it, and I was reading it, and I got really mad because somebody did a quote that said that I was steadfast to my own thoughts. And it just so annoyed me. And so I went home, and my wife at the time, I was like, "Can you believe they wrote this?" And she just goes, "Duh." It was such a moment. I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I am a little steadfast to my own thoughts." And at that point, really a big shift started to happen.
Yeah, it's hard because sometimes the people get a position of authority and they immediately think, well, I should top down because I got the experience. I did this. And that's it. It's interesting. There's certain things you have to have, like command and control structures. You have the hierarchy of a company or the structure. But a lot of times, if you want to really have participation, you have to foster an environment where somebody doesn't feel like their hand's going to get slapped, that they're
Mm,
going to look like a fool. Like if you make it so like no one's gonna give you any information if they feel like they're gonna get attacked or they're gonna be defamed or they're gonna get shamed or could what how come you didn't know that? Um, it's just a matter of having some sociology or some psychology in the way you operate. And a lot of times we're told, oh, that's a softer thing. That's oh, I don't need to know about that. And
mm.
sometimes you do need to know about the softer things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned is as I would move up inside a company, I started to feel like, I had less power or control than I did than went before. And what I discovered is right, working your way up to a leadership position, your success is based on finding answers. But then you hit a certain point in leadership where it's about the questions that you ask are more important than the answers that you have.
Mhm. Yeah, you
And
really
I think
have to, like, find out what you don't know. Like, what is it that I don't know? What are all the options on the table? And really, like, when I worked in Japan, what I thought was really cool, I worked for 2 years, you go down to, like, the actual engineers and the people on the floor, and they were listening to the people putting the stuff together.
mm,
And they would feed back to the engineer and they would say, "Hey, there's a better way of doing this." Now, in some organizations, if you challenge the engineer's design, they're like, they don't want to hear anything. They don't want to hear it at all. Cause like, like you're just putting it together. You're not an engineer. You don't have the degree. You didn't go here. You didn't go there. I was like, okay, fine.
right.
But if you act, what they wanted to do is they wanted to get to zero defect. And the way to get to zero defect is to make sure that you listen up and down across the whole enterprise. So when somebody tells you something, a CSR tells you something, the person on the floor tells you something, somebody in the warehouse tells you something, you actually listen and you bring it into your flow and you change things. And that's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of being.
Yeah, when I was director of retail at Bose, we had this problem. Don't remember specifically what it was, but I was spending weeks on trying to solve it. And I was at a store, uh, I believe in South Florida, and I was talking to this young man. He was a part timer, and I mentioned it, and he just gave me the answer. He had it right
Hmm.
front line for a timer, and I asked him, like, "Wow, why didn't you tell anyone this?" And he goes, "Well, nobody asked."
Yeah, they won't. I mean, a lot of times people just don't assume that, like you're just clocking in. You're not really like into the whole enterprise. That the guys in the C-suite, the middle managers, the guys who are the engineers, they're the only ones who are really vested. And that's like an incorrect way of thinking. Because if you make all the employees vested, right, all of them have an input, then you're gonna have a better like organization because those people who don't feel like they're invested, they can just walk away. They might not be given their 100%, but if they realize that if I see something and I say something and it actually goes up the chain, wow, maybe there's a place for me here. Maybe I can move up
Yeah,
rather than
I
I'm
gotta say,
always going to be here.
yeah, one of the things I like about the newer generations is they're much more comfortable in speaking up. And my generation, you waited till you were asked, and I think this newer generation is faster to actually bring things forward. And some of the older generation don't like that, but
No.
uh, but
They
I
kind of
actually
like
think,
the lane. People
yeah,
that
exactly,
well, we were kind of taught. I mean, our whole structure was kind of based on agrarian industrial assembly line structures,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
And in
yes,
those structures, you just do your role and you don't go outside your role because, like, if you're on the Henry Ford assembly line, you do that one task. That's your task. Why are you concerned about the task 10 steps up? You shouldn't care about that. We don't want to hear about that.
and wait your
It's just like,
right, wait your turn, right? I'll retire, then you move up.
yeah, yeah. And I think today the people are saying like, hey, I actually heard what you said, but then I looked this up and I looked at that and it doesn't make sense. It's like it doesn't make sense. You said you want to get to this, but you're not doing it. Like you're saying you're doing it, like you said, the person says, "Oh, we got the best greeters in the world." When I go look, it doesn't
Right,
look like that to me. And then the younger generation's willing to go to the management and say, "Why that doesn't look right.
right.
That's not what you said you're doing." The customer's saying this, and you're not even listening to what they're saying.
Good point.
But it's like in terms of actions, you had the statement like you're one action away starting today. Like so, that makes a lot of sense. How did you come to that moment?
Yeah, look, one of the things I find is that people have a tendency to talk a lot about what they're going to do.
Hmm.
Uh, Actually, let me bring it back to, I one time was visiting a client, and they were on the verge of going out of business. And it was interesting because I would bring up, and so I was really motivated. Let's turn it around right now. We don't have to wait a month. Let's do it today. And
Hmm.
I'd bring something up, and no matter, and it was this two sisters who owned the business, and no matter what I brought up, they would either say, "We tried it and it didn't work," or "That's not going to work." Right. And so, no matter what I brought up, they were resistant to it. And the fact is, right, the only thing that makes change happen is action. Excuse me. I love the saying. I didn't create it, but is we we don't think our way into a new way of acting. We act our way into a new way of thinking. We act
Hmm.
our way into a new way of thinking. And so it's action that changes everything, not thinking. It's action. And so a lot of
Yeah.
times we wait, right? We wait for the perfect moment, right? Everything's in place, and before you know it, 5 years have gone by or something. And I'm still going to do that, right? I'm gonna make my own record. I'm gonna write that book. I'm gonna go on that vacation. But they wait for everything to be perfect, and there
Yeah.
is no perfect.
Perfection is a trap. The perfection trap is the worst thing because it's really,
Absolutely.
what I find is like if you talk to any artist, they'll say like, "Do you understand how many things are on the cutting room floor? Right? Do you know how much stuff I did before you actually saw it, right? You know,
Mm,
like there's 100 demos here. It's like demo 101 is what came into the world, but it doesn't mean I wasn't working on it. I was working on it every day. Yeah, I'm actually putting this stuff out, and then I'm making decisions. Like, you know, get writers like I'm doing some stream of consciousness, and I've got my whole plan for this world I built. I created all these character templates, but then suddenly I walked in the woods. I got this new idea I got to download. I chose to take the download and change what my outline was.
right.
And you have to actually get it out, get it from inside and put it out. And then you have to actually distribute it. So you got to get on the page. That's what they don't get out of your head. But then you also have to get it into the world. The problem a lot of people have is getting it into the world. They'll put it on the page or put it on the tape, and then they still won't put it into the world. That's the next level.
Yeah. Look, an idea doesn't change anything, right? I mean, how many people, we're on a podcast. How many people probably have talked, said they want to do their own podcast? And what's this number 490? What?
I'm at like over 1,300.
1,300. Sorry. Yeah. 1,300. Right. And so it started with you doing the first podcast. And my guess is you're a little bit better than you were with podcast 1 and 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But a lot of people won't do 1 and 2 and 3 because I can't do it as good as Phantom.
I ran into people saying that I got to get that mic. I got to get this camera. I got to get the service. I got to get my backgrounds. I got to get a script developer. I got to get this. I got to get that. I started on an iPhone app that, like, you didn't have video and it was pre-recorded and, it wasn't high level microphone. And I did probably like 50 episodes like that. And then I said, oh, I need to ramp up. And so gradually over time, but I didn't stop from going into the world without having the equipment. It's like you can start, and this is like the thing with Jack White one time said he used like $100 Series Robot guitar in a recording because it's like it didn't matter, like the level of the guitar. It was like how he played it, and so he wasn't, and he actually kept that recording and put it out. So you got these guitar players. Well, I gotta have this $5,000 guitar. I gotta have this preamp. I gotta have this. No, you don't. You just gotta do it.
Right. Yeah. Look, and one action becomes another action becomes another action. But there's a lot of people I think who get up every day, right, and they're not happy either with their financial situation. They're not happy with the job they have, the relationship, and right. So I either kind of shrink away and do nothing until I blow up and I quit the job that I, without even having another job or what have you. But if every day you took just that one step, that one thing to get you closer, maybe it's starting a part-time gig, starting to do a podcast. And even if you, like, say, you don't have the right equipment or don't have even guests yet, there's always one action you can take. And so, and kind of bringing it back to this what if, I think one of the things, right, is that if there's always other perspective, you can always have a different perspective and option. There's always different actions you can take.
Yeah, you can reframe things. A lot of times, like framing is always interesting. I was talking to a film director, and the film director was like talking about like how you choose to frame that moment. It goes like you talk to the screenwriter, you talk to the actor, you talk to the lighting director, but you're the producer. You got to make a decision, and you got all these options of like how do I actually emphasize this moment. And in your life, you make decisions like, how am I framing this? Do I want to frame it from this angle, from that angle? Do I want to go like 50,000 foot view, or I want to close up? I want to focus on this and focus on that. And it's up to you. You have to make decisions. You have to decide what is it. And then if you make a decision that's like, oh, it's not the end of the world, because the film director, I got 50 different angles I could use. At some point, I got to pick one.
Right. That's it.
I still went and did them. You'll go and look at it. It's like they've got tons of different variations of what they could have done. And then eventually they go into post-production, and they're like, okay, we're going to use this. Oh, we're going to have to re-record this because it doesn't work. We're going to have to get new audio because it doesn't work. We got to actually get new new film because this doesn't work. But they make decisions. They actually take what they have, and all the work they did is not for naught. Even the stuff they didn't use actually helped
Right.
them
Still
get
getting
to
them there
where
where
they
they're
need to
going.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and I think one of the things that's really helped me in my recovery, I've been sober and clean and sober for 38 years, is this ability to kind of reframe things. I think the thing is so much of what's out there in the personal growth space is they teach how to reframe, but it's really, it's about then turning it into action, right? The 3 steps of the what if rule is, pause, question, and go. That third step is pretty darn important. Go,
Yeah.
right? Because I
Yeah.
can reframe it and say, well, maybe this isn't how I'm the right way to handle with my boss, but then it's what am I going to do with it? And to your example, which I really like is the director has to pick one and then go. And it doesn't mean the others were wrong. It's just mean this is what I chose to move forward with.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of actors that like they did a whole scene and it never even gets out. I mean, they get paid for it, but it's like it doesn't actually even hit. It never ever nobody gets to see it. And it's just a choice. I mean, like, the actor should look at it as like, hey, I had to do that. It didn't get shown, but that experience, it helped me. You could look at it as like you get mad, you could get resentful. But if you look at it, like every time I do something, whether it gets to the 100%, everybody loving it, or it's in the cutting room floor, is the fact that it's life and you experience something that's going to help you maybe with the next project. It's going to maybe help you with something in your life because you learn about disappointment and you learn like, well, how do I recover from that? Like, what do I
Right.
do? Sometimes you have to go through it in order to know what to do.
Right. And I think, part of the problem that people get in the way is they'll label it like, well, I failed. Well, if you've learned something from it and then you can interpret it and use it moving forward, yeah, then it's not a failure. I mean, when I was in high school and I would ask a girl out, I got turned down a lot, believe me, a lot. Right. But, and then finally, I think when one said yes, I'm like, really? Are you sure? Uh, but I had to get through all those to get to that yes.
Yeah, that's the thing, and people have to realize is like it's not 0 to 100. There's a lot
Mm,
of work. My daughter's an artist, and her first paintings didn't get into the galleries, right? It took a lot of work to get. Now she gets in the galleries more often because she figured it out. She figured like,
right.
how do I get these people to want to put my work in the gallery? And she figured out how to, from a relationships perspective, how to communicate with these people, find out what they want, and then also be able to sell what she has, right? And even if they
Right.
didn't want it, learn how to get them to want it, right? So then it became like it's not just doing the work. You had to learn other things. You had to have other skill sets in order to move forward. And if you just took the rejection and you said, "Well, I'm not a good artist," then you're never going to get anywhere.
Right. And I think with social media and everything, we see these people today, right, who look like they're overnight success. And I know with musicians, right, an overnight success, but how many years, did they play the crappy little club
Yeah,
or even trying to get booked into a club? We don't see the development that went into where they're at today.
it's all the work. And like one time I was looking at this thing, it's like, oh, you got these 12 steps to this. I say, yeah, it's the 12 steps plus the 10 years that you experienced
Mm,
before the 12 steps. And so, like,
right.
of course, maybe it works for you, but everybody's got their 10-year period of like, well, what do I learn from that? And so you don't realize is that your whole life is your roadmap. And if you just want to micro pick like these tiny things I'm going to do in 10 days and 30 days, like, well, you got to look at your whole life. And then you got to look at what's sustainable. What could you keep on doing tomorrow and the next day and day after that? And if
Yeah.
you
I
can
think it's that.
only do it for a very short time, it's like a fad diet. Like, well, you're not going to stay on that, are you?
Yeah. No, and I think, if I, for anyone watching, for me, it's, I think the most important lesson I've learned through the years is, it's what I do on a daily basis. And I'm really big into journaling, but I do what I call future journaling. So, right, most people journal just, kind of about either how they're feeling or how their day went. I do it a little bit different. I get up every morning and I journal in who I want to be that day, not what I want to do. I start with who I want to be. Right. And so, how do I want to be as a father? How do I want to be as a friend? How do I want to be? I wrote this morning about how I want to be as a podcast guest. Right. And so when I start off with a daily plan of who I plan to be, I'm much more likely to achieve it. And, people talk about trying to be 1% better. I'm pretty good at math, but I don't know what my 1% would look like to be better. But I do know that if I take a couple actions every day to be better, I will be better. And I think that's how you get through that 10-year plan and get to those levels of success that you want, because you've worked on it. And most important is you've worked on yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's like an athlete, in order, you got to do those reps. You got to practice the plays. You don't get it by just sitting around saying, yeah, I'm going to be awesome. I'm dreaming about being awesome. That can help. I've heard, the athletes like, oh, before I go to sleep, I focused, I'm winning the game. So I'm not having nightmares about losing the game. But now on top of that, they're doing all their practice and their muscle memory, and you're looking at the plays and they're talking to everybody. They're doing work. You have to do work. And it's a lot of times it's like multiple legs. It's like your spirit, your soul, your mind, your body, your health. You got to look at it, and like some people was like, well, I'll just work out my 6-pack abs. But if you don't work on your mind could be wandering. You could be in perfect condition and you're going to screw up that play because your head's not in the game. So you gotta look at everything.
Yeah. You can have a vision board, but you still got to do something to make that vision happen. It's nice to have a goal out there, but it's what you're going to do to get there.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and also not to be so perfection trap, and the comparison trap, the combined thing. Like, oh, I want to be like I want to be like Bob Dylan, but I'm never going to be Bob Dylan. Like, well, yeah, you're never going to be Bob Dylan because Bob Dylan is him, right? But you look at like Lou Reed, like he's a poet, a different type of poet than Bob Dylan. He went a different direction. They're totally different, same kind of in the same environment, but different approaches to how to get to the same thing. And like everybody can still play the game. Like if Dylan gave a permission structure, you didn't have to have perfect pitch voice. You could be a really good writer. And Lou saw that and said, yeah, I can be a poet. I can actually be an artist that's a poet and be in music and not have a perfect voice at all. And it opened it up for a lot of different, types of artists to say, hey, I actually can come into the room. I actually can get through the gate. I don't have to be Sinatra. I don't have to be Johnny Mathis. I don't have to have that really old school. Like that was the gate. You had to have that, or you couldn't even do it.
Right. Yeah, and I think probably most important, right, is in those comparisons, right, is they all followed their passion, right? They followed who they want to be versus what they thought the world wanted them to be.
Yeah, I think so many kids today, they get they're disenchanted because like, oh, you got AI. So should I go to the library and go do the research? Like, should I understand the Dewey Decimal System, or should I just do a bunch of prompts? Right. And I would always stress, you still need to do it the old way, because you never know if the power goes down and you have to use your head and you don't have your computer and you don't have your phone. Do you know how to get to it without using that? So like people say, oh, I get like, well, the computer's always going to be better than me. It's not about the computer doing it faster or better than you. It's the fact that you know how to do it, that you know how to critically think. And even if the computer didn't do it in a millisecond, it's still important to your life to know about the process of critical thinking, of understanding, is that actually a fact? Is that really true? did you do the work to actually uncover what it is you're trying to do? And I think that
Absolutely.
rigor, we're being told, oh, we don't need the rigor. It's like, yeah, you do.
And Phantom, let me just say, I did not have Dewey Decimal System on today's bingo card. So kudos to you. I love that. And
Yeah,
probably,
yeah.
anyone under 40 is going, Dewey, what's that?
What is that? 'Cause they don't use it.
Yeah. Back when you had to use a card catalog.
You figure out where it is. You had to go look for it in the library to find it. I was like, that's like, I'm a child of the 70s, so I'm kind of locked into that. But
Yeah, and just one thing, you talked about AI, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about your guests on AI recently, right? There's really there's two different ways that, right, I can use AI to help better myself, or I can have AI to replace myself, right?
yeah,
So,
it's a balance.
and I've used AI for years, and I use it a lot in kind of the brainstorming of ideas and what I can bring out. It's always starts with my idea. I never ask AI to help me
For the
write,
idea.
write an article for me,
Yeah,
right?
that's
But
like
it
that's
can,
the trap that some folks are getting in,
oh,
because
terrible.
instead of having their own vision, they're using it to do like 90% of the work. It's like a musician. Like, we have these AI bands now, AI musicians, and musicians are kind of going crazy because they're like, wait a minute, like, we have to buy our own equipment, we have to do all this work, and then somebody's prompt engineering a song, and I'm like, okay, you can go and do that, but what you don't understand is, like, art is about emotional human feelings. Computers don't have feelings. Like, they're grabbing things that other people have done,
Yeah, you're
right?
right.
And they're putting it together, and like somebody's cutting photos out of magazines and throwing them on a board, and then arranging them in a way that seems convincing. Now, that's a cool way of doing art, but did it really come from personal experience or pain? And music is really emotional. And tell me where the computer has emotions. I don't think it has.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing, right? In books, right? People are pumping out AI books, and I don't think, it's not going to connect with people. And yeah, you want to make your $7 on Kindle or something,
Yeah.
but you're not an author. You know,
Yeah, it's
it's
like what happened with music, and like everybody can get their own studio. And so you get this massive deluge of all this art, and it's like overloaded. Where, previously you had to go through a gate, A&R would check in, like, is this guy really an artist? Producers are like music teachers, and engineers would teach you, this is how a song should go. This is where the bridge should be. This is where, so you learned,
right.
right? Now you get all these people just doing it on their own. They're not getting any kind of feedback from like a teacher or a professor level thing that we used to go on. So it's cool. It's like democratized the music, but it's also kind of creates so much of a flood. There's a lot of noise. And then people are like, well, where's the real music?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely making it harder for the real musician. Now, luckily, we have TikTok and Instagram. We have all these other
Yeah, there's ways to
avenues,
blow up. Yeah, you got to
but
learn how to play the game. You got to learn how do I get people to find me? And now that's your responsibility. It's not just making the music or writing a book. Like, how do I get that book into the ether and get it to the top of the Amazon list, or get it to the top of the algorithm so somebody actually sees me? And now that's a whole another level of work that you have to, a lot of artists will like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with the business. Well, are you in art to be your main line? Then it's a business.
right. Yeah, and we started off talking about, right, about human connection, and how the podcast and not having a 30-second clip versus an hour conversation. And that's, to me, it's one of the reasons that I love to do podcasts when I have a new book out, because it allows me to talk about what's in it for the reader. And like, you don't make money in books.
Yeah.
Most musicians, only the
Yeah.
very top echelon,
Yeah.
James Clear, and,
Yeah. Other big guys.
right? So the real big ones. But the fact is, and you started off with, what do you do? What you do? I want to help people change and grow. And so the only way to do that is, sure, you got to have a good listing on Amazon and all that, but ultimately it's about connecting with another person and them saying, oh, that's interesting, I'll check that out and give it a shot. And hopefully, the other thing I do, I have down the street from me is one of those little libraries, little boxes on the side of a wall. And so every couple of days I take one of my books down and I put it in there. And I always write, please read it, learn, and pass it on.
Oh, that's
and,
cool.
And so, because that's my goal. And it's kind of like music, if you want your music heard, you want your book read, and just so you can impact others and maybe make just a small little difference in the world today.
Yeah, and then you get on a podcast and maybe go do like a TEDx talk. You go out. Like a lot of times with the music today, like we everything. It's not just like the song. You've got to get that song into like what we call sync licensing. Like you get it out into the world in other ways. Like it's not. I'm a synthesis, so I do a lot of instrumental stuff. I can get music like into advertising. I could get into films. Like there's so much stuff that needs music that you might not, be in the top 10. But if you can get your song into an ad, or you can get the song into an independent film, and then independent film people are looking for music, and you work out a deal with this, filmmaker, and like, hey, like let's work a deal. Like I put this here, you tell your other filmmakers that I'm willing to do that. Then you find opportunities, like, and maybe you didn't get money on the first one. But then people say, hey, this guy plays ball with these guys, and he'll give you music for your project. Then boom, you start getting opportunities. It really goes from the communication of you had an idea, but now you communicate with other people. You find out what they want and what they need. And then you put the book in the library that passes on. People say, hey, this author is saying something. And suddenly people might go out and say, well, what else is he writing about? They go look on Amazon, they find your stuff, they buy more stuff. Like, because you put something out and you didn't look for the money on the first thing. Sometimes it cascades and it actually brings you opportunities. It brings you, something you didn't expect.
Yeah, look, I think there's probably some really good musicians and some really great authors out there who've put some stuff out there, but they haven't done, because it's when it's completed, when the project completed is when the work begins, right? The writing is enjoyable, for me, and and working with editors and all that, and having those conversations. But once once the book gets put into this kind of form, that's when the real work begins. And
you
just
have to
put
start
the time
showing
in.
up. They show up at the bookstore, do the signing, go and see if you can go on a college campus and talk to people about it. Get into, wherever you can get opportunities. Like, hey, can I get in front of this crowd? Can I get here? Can I go to here? Go to this group and talk about it here. The more you ask the questions, like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. Well, ask somebody if you can do it.
Right.
You won't know if you could do it until you ask me, can I come here and do this? They could say no, or they could say, oh, maybe we never did that. Oh, maybe we can do that.
And one of the things I've learned in my life is that, is everything for me is shaped around my motives, right? When I have right motives, I usually have right actions, right? And so if my motives are to just try to sell some books, and on an Amazon book, you make, $1 something or whatever, you're not in it for the money, right?
No.
But I do want, right? I want the book in people's hands because I believe that they can make some really immediate change in who they are and in their personal growth. And my goal is to give them this simple methodology that I know will work for them. And that's
you
why,
want to get your
I do what I do.
Yeah, and if you can get your message out, you can go on on a podcast and go on a radio. You can go whoever allows you to come to a community meeting. Like, hey, this is the cultural part of this community meeting. Every day, every time we have cultural stuff, like here's this author is going to talk about this. This artist is going to show their painting. You find community things like where there's opportunities to spread information. To give people, something that's going to be of value. And to me, it's like anytime somebody has a vision, Somebody has a new look at an idea or a problem. Everybody's got this problem. They get stuck. Everybody can feel that. So people are always looking, how do I get unstuck? So now, it's like, oh, I can go look at what you have, and I can go take this QR code here and go to your website at dougfleener.com, and then, oh, he's got this book. Let me check it out. That's how you get into the world. Like, they make somebody scan that, make somebody listen to the podcast. They say, oh, here's something new. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I should check that out.
And I think this is true of, if you're not a musician, you're not a writer, but you're working inside a company and you're in a mid-level, this same approach about sharing your message and being passionate and making human connection, that works in the corporate world just as much. Or if you're you're a business owner. And look, when I've owned my own business, I was not love to go to mixers, right, and talk to people. But what I learned is if I could go out and try to do something for those people, something good would help me. Yeah, I call it the give to get. I know that when I put goodness out, goodness comes back, but it starts with my actions.
Yeah, you have to communicate. You've got to you got to create connections. A lot of what people do, they go on these job sites and they're just focused on, get my AI resume. And
Right.
what a lot of things going on today is like, you need to have that Rolodex of people. Go find a former boss, go have lunch with them, right? Go have lunch, go talk to some people you went to school with. Go talk to, this actually talk to the HR people. Ask them questions. Don't just send your thing through the ether. Actually pick up the phone and start talking to people. Start having,
Not the phone.
lunches. That's how you get the job.
Yeah. Some people, man, they don't want to have to pick up that phone. And I think it's about what can I do for you? And when you
Yeah,
do
and
something for
tell
someone,
somebody, like, you come into a company. Yeah, you come into a company, say, my resume doesn't match what this job is, but I'm gonna have this elevator pitch. I'm gonna tell you what I think I could do for you. And I've actually done that. I've come into companies and I didn't have anything that they said they wanted. But then I told my story. I gave a pitch. And then I got in, I told them what I could do for 'em. And then I got a role that got created for me. I mean, and so that when you say, well, I can't find it, well, you can create it by showing what value you bring. You can go and tell somebody, you can so then you're looking at all these places and you're not finding the fit where you can make the fit. You can make it happen.
yeah, look, if I look at as director of retail for Bose, as a CEO of a national company, if all because of connections with people, if I sent a resume in for any of those jobs today, I would get rejected so fast. And I think that's what happens to people, right? And so they kind of might blame the system, but you can blame the system or you can take ownership
Do something about
of
it. Yeah.
your own search and say, here, what am I going to do to make it happen? And it's always going to be through our human connections.
Yeah. Human connection. That's the big, epiphany. Like, we got all these tools. They're cool. Don't down the tools. Yeah, you can use them, but be mindful that you might have to do some way, they call it, the old detective show, like, I'm actually going to have my shoes on the ground. I got to walk down the
Right.
neighborhood. I got to talk to people. I got to find out what happened. Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to have that shoe leather. You got to go spend it. You got to do it.
Right. Right. Taking
but
action.
Yeah, well, thank you for being on here today. Again, the QR code is out there. Take your phone, scan it. It'll bring you right to dougfleener.com. And you go there. That's, I believe that you could, can you pre-order your book there that comes out?
Yeah, so I will give you the links. I have a book, The Day Makes the Year Makes a Life, that I wrote 2 years ago. That's available up on Kindle, up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores. And then this new book will come out on January 6th. You can pre-order the Kindle, or you can at least come sign up for my newsletter. I put out a weekly newsletter. I also put out a daily called the Daily What If, and it just is a way to kind of interrupt your thinking in your day, as you move into it, to have one thought to, again, spark this change and growth.
Well, thank you again for spending the Saturday morning with us. And I thank you for being on the show. We've been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. We'll be on many platforms like Spotify, Video Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Newsly. By the end of the day tomorrow, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.